Sometimes, no matter how right a relationship seems on the surface, there's an underlying feeling that something isn't quite right. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where, despite everything looking perfect, peace feels just out of reach? When God doesn't want you to be with someone, He doesn't always send thunderous signs. Instead, subtle nudges, quiet unease, and small disruptions can act as His whispers, urging you to pay attention. Relationships often become complex, and discerning God's will can feel challenging, but certain signs make His intentions clearer. Think about it: a lingering tension, a consistent lack of peace, or a growing distance from faith. These aren't just random feelings. They're often God's way of communicating that this connection may not be part of His plan. You may even find that wise counsel and unexpected delays serve as quiet roadblocks, encouraging you to reflect and step back. It's in these moments of discomfort and questioning that God is gently guiding you towards something better, something aligned with His perfect timing. Sometimes, understanding these signs can be life-changing. Imagine the freedom in knowing when to let go, freeing yourself to embrace a future filled with purpose and clarity. This journey isn't just about relationships. It's about trusting God's plan, even when it leads you away from someone you wanted to be with. Together, we'll uncover these signs, explore the wisdom behind them, and see how God's guidance can transform your path to something truly fulfilling. When a relationship looks ideal on the outside, it's easy to ignore those subtle signs that hint otherwise. You know, the ones that tug at you quietly. Maybe a nagging feeling of unease that's hard to pinpoint. Imagine someone's dating someone seemingly perfect, yet there's this underlying discomfort. It's a gentle nudge, almost like God's quiet voice hinting that this might not be it. Even if there's no obvious red flag, that little feeling inside, it's often there for a reason. Pay attention to that. Sometimes, it's the only warning you'll get. But what does one do with these feelings? Here's a practical approach. Rather than suppressing them, take a step back and reflect. Go for a walk, meditate, or even journal about what exactly feels off. In those quiet moments, clarity often emerges, and one begins to notice things they hadn't before. It's not just about finding flaws in the other person, but understanding where these feelings are coming from. Imagine talking to a friend about it. What advice would you give them? Often, hearing yourself gives you all the answers you need. Let's say there's this constant inner tension, a feeling of walking on eggshells, perhaps. When God doesn't want you to be with someone, this internal resistance might not just be random. It could be spiritual guidance. These signs often show up as unease, but not everyone realizes that it could be divine. There's a powerful lesson here. Sometimes, God's signs aren't loud warnings but soft nudges. If there's no peace within, that's a message worth listening to. Sometimes, people ignore these subtle signs because they think they can fix them over time. But relationships are meant to bring a sense of security, not anxiety. If someone feels like they constantly have to adapt, hide their quirks, or change their values to make it work, it's a red flag. True relationships feel natural. There's no need to force compatibility. When one feels they're hiding parts of themselves, it's not a sign to work harder, but to perhaps let go. A relatable example might be someone who's always on edge before seeing their partner. There's no real fight, but they're just never at ease. Over time, this feeling erodes one's peace and even faith. They might start questioning themselves, doubting if they're enough or too much. But when a relationship disrupts inner peace this way, it's worth exploring if it aligns with God's intentions. And sometimes, we can be quick to brush these feelings aside, thinking they're just jitters or personal issues. But there's wisdom in reflection. Could these signs be pointing towards something deeper? Only by paying attention to these small, internal cues do we start to understand the bigger picture that God may be revealing. Because sometimes, staying quiet and observing might lead to more clarity than any outside advice could offer. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt God was sending you signs about a relationship? Maybe that feeling that something was off, even when everything seemed perfect? Share your experience in the comments. Your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Inner peace. It's that quiet, grounding force that tells us we're exactly where we're supposed to be. When a relationship disrupts this peace, it's more than a passing discomfort. It could be a deeper sign that something's off. Imagine being with someone yet feeling unsettled, a bit restless in their presence. It's not about them doing anything wrong, but more about your own spirit resisting. Inner peace is God's way of saying, "This is right for you." Without it, maybe the path isn't as aligned as we think. How does one know if peace is missing? Sometimes it's subtle, like that feeling of relief when you're away from someone rather than with them. It's the sigh of relaxation that hits once you're alone, or that sensation of breathing easier without them around. This kind of inner signal is worth listening to. If being together feels like a weight rather than a joy, it might be time to reevaluate. Peace isn't just a nice to have, it's the compass guiding us to what's best. Take this practical exercise. Next time there's a decision involving the relationship, pause and ask, do I feel calm or conflicted? The answer often speaks louder than any external advice. If there's always a hint of worry, if thoughts feel scattered, or if there's a cloud hanging over every interaction, that's not inner peace. It's a gentle nudge, a small whisper from God, saying maybe this isn't the path intended for you. Inner peace is more than just a feeling. It's a shield. It protects from needless stress, anxiety, and conflict. Consider someone who's in a relationship that drains them. Even when they're trying to focus on other things, the unrest lingers, affecting everything from work to family time. This isn't how God designs relationships to be. When peace is absent, it's worth questioning if this relationship truly aligns with divine purpose or if it's pulling one away from it. And let's be real. Relationships that lack peace often lead to physical symptoms too. Maybe it's difficulty sleeping, constant tension, or a lingering headache. The body has a way of signaling when something's not right spiritually. Imagine a person who feels relaxed, their mind clear, their body at ease. That's the kind of peace God intends, not one that leaves us exhausted or stressed. If the relationship doesn't bring that, maybe it's time to step back. So, what if peace is missing? The journey to find it might mean letting go, or it could mean exploring what's causing the disruption. It doesn't have to be an immediate decision, but a conscious observation. After all, God's way isn't to lead us into chaos, but into a place of calm, into relationships where peace is the natural state. Without that, we may be missing the very message He's sending. Aligning values in a relationship isn't just important, it's foundational. Think of it as the blueprint that supports everything else. When two people share core values, there's a natural flow. Decisions are easier and conflicts often resolve themselves. But when values clash, even minor disagreements can feel monumental. Imagine someone deeply committed to faith paired with someone indifferent to spirituality. Over time, those differences can feel like a constant tug of war, pulling them further from what's essential to each. The beauty of values alignment is that it brings clarity. If two people value honesty, they know there's no room for secrets or deceit. If they both value kindness, they'll naturally treat each other with respect, even in disagreements. Take a couple who values family deeply. They'll find joy in supporting each other's families rather than seeing them as a burden. Values simplify things, creating a shared path instead of a series of compromises. When God brings two people together, these shared values are often a sign of His blessing. But what if the values don't line up? It's like building a house on uneven ground. Things may seem fine initially, but over time, cracks begin to show. For instance, one person might value financial security, while the other has a more carefree approach to spending. It may seem manageable at first, but with time, these differences can lead to resentment, even frustration. Recognizing misalignment early on can save heartache. It's not about judgment, but about honesty with oneself and each other. To explore alignment, consider this. What are the non-negotiables in life? For some, it's faith. For others, it's family, honesty, or personal growth. Reflect on whether the other person upholds these same principles. A good exercise is to sit down and openly discuss these values. List them out. See where they connect and where they differ. It's in this space of open, respectful conversation that real compatibility, or lack thereof, reveals itself. Without shared values, growth in the relationship can feel stunted. One person might want to spend weekends volunteering, while the other prioritizes leisure. These aren't wrong choices, but when values don't match, the joy of shared experiences diminishes. It becomes harder to find that common ground where both feel fulfilled. And here's the thing. Alignment in values isn't just a matter of compatibility. It's about paving a shared future that feels right to both hearts. So, if values don't align, does that mean the relationship is doomed? Not necessarily, but it does mean a choice must be made. Either both work to bridge the gap, or they accept that perhaps this connection isn't meant to go further. God's wisdom shines through clarity. When a relationship feels right, shared values create a natural harmony that's unmistakable. Without that, we're left searching, sometimes endlessly, for a sense of connection that may never fully come. A relationship that nurtures one's spiritual growth is like a breath of fresh air. Imagine being with someone who encourages not only personal ambitions, but also a stronger connection with faith. When two people come together and their relationship brings them closer to God, there's a unique strength in that bond. It's not just about shared beliefs, but a shared journey. A relationship that uplifts spiritually feels like a blessing, a clear sign that God's hand is guiding both. On the other hand, a relationship that distances one from faith can feel like a burden on the soul. Picture someone once active in prayer, now rarely finding the time because their partner's priorities lie elsewhere. Over time, this subtle shift can lead to spiritual decline. Relationships that pull one away from what's holy often carry an emptiness that's hard to ignore. Spiritual fulfillment should never be sacrificed, especially in a relationship that's supposed to enhance life, not detract from it. There's a beautiful power in a relationship that brings positive spiritual impact. Imagine a couple who prays together, attends faith gatherings, and even embarks on charity work side by side. These actions don't just strengthen the bond between the two, but also enrich their spiritual lives. When one person stumbles, the other lifts them. This kind of spiritual partnership is rare, but invaluable. It's like a compass, constantly pointing both towards a path of purpose and peace. Yet, when spiritual misalignment begins to impact one's peace, it can be telling. Maybe one person wants to serve more, while the other questions the need. Or one feels deeply called to explore scripture, while the other isn't interested. These differences can create a silent struggle, a divide that doesn't seem obvious but grows over time. When God doesn't want you to be with someone, this misalignment often shows up as resistance to spiritual growth, as if two paths are gradually diverging. Think of those who find themselves drifting from prayer, no longer attending spiritual gatherings and cars, or even avoiding personal reflection because their partner doesn't see the value in it. Over time, this impact can weigh heavy on the heart. For a relationship to truly flourish, both need to find inspiration and encouragement in each other's spirituality. Without that, there's a risk of losing oneself in a relationship that was never meant to be. So, what's the takeaway? When a relationship strengthens one's connection to God, it feels right at every level. But if it continually distances one from that connection, it may be a sign. A true relationship doesn't require compromising faith. Instead, it should feel like a beautiful partnership in spiritual growth. When the path feels harmonious, it's as if God is giving a quiet nod of approval, encouraging both to walk this journey together. Sometimes, the clearest insight comes from those who have walked the path before. A supportive community, wise friends, family, or even mentors can offer perspectives we may overlook. Imagine someone struggling in a relationship, unsure if it's meant to last. Talking to a trusted friend or elder could provide clarity that's hard to find alone. Often, God uses others to guide us, sending messages through those who know us best and who see things with fresh eyes. The value of advice lies not just in getting opinions, but in gaining new understanding. Let's say someone receives similar feedback from multiple people about their relationship. It's like seeing a pattern, a recurring signal that maybe things aren't as solid as they seemed. Wise counsel helps reveal things hidden in plain sight. When people outside the situation notice concerns or applaud genuine connection, it speaks volumes. Advice from a community is often God's gentle nudge, helping us see what's true. However, finding the right voices is crucial. Not everyone's advice is meant to guide. Consider looking for those who are grounded in faith, people who don't just offer opinions but have real wisdom. A friend with a strong spiritual foundation or a mentor who's been through similar challenges can be incredibly insightful. In relationships, it's easy to get lost in emotions, and outside perspectives provide a grounding force. Seek advice from those who understand your values and who genuinely want the best for you. Involving community doesn't mean surrendering personal judgment. Think of it like gathering pieces to a puzzle. One person may point out something positive you hadn't seen, while another may gently highlight areas of concern. When advice aligns with your intuition, it strengthens your decision-making. However, when advice brings up new doubts, it can be a signal worth considering. God often speaks through the people around us, subtly pointing out things that might need reevaluation. Some fear involving others in their relationship, thinking it's a sign of weakness. But the truth is, community is a gift meant to support us, especially in times of confusion. Real connections aren't built in isolation. They grow through shared insights and experiences. If there's resistance to listening to others or a feeling of defensiveness, it could be worth exploring why. Sometimes, that resistance is itself a sign, a hint that perhaps things aren't as aligned as we wish. In the end, advice and community act as mirrors, reflecting things we might not see alone. Wise counsel, given with love, has a way of clarifying even the most complex relationships. When the right people support and advise us, it feels like God Himself is gently guiding our path. And if that advice brings a sense of peace, it could be the answer we've been searching for all along. Purpose and authenticity in a relationship are like the roots of a tree. They ground and support everything else. When someone can be their true self around their partner, it brings a level of comfort that's hard to match. Imagine a person feeling free to express their quirks, ambitions, and even fears without judgment. A relationship that supports one's purpose and individuality is a relationship built on a solid foundation. It's almost as if God's saying, "This is the right soil for you to grow." Authenticity doesn't mean perfection, it means realness. In a healthy relationship, there's no need to pretend or hide. Both people can be honest about their struggles, dreams, and even flaws. Think of it as a safe space where each person feels valued, just as they are. When one feels they must wear a mask or adapt to fit in, it's exhausting and unfulfilling. If a relationship makes you feel less like yourself, that's a strong indicator that something's missing. God's plans don't involve hiding who we truly are. A relationship that aligns with purpose feels effortless in its support. Imagine someone whose calling involves helping others or creating something meaningful. When their partner encourages them, genuinely supporting those goals, it feels like divine affirmation. In contrast, when a partner dismisses or diminishes those dreams, it can feel like a constant uphill battle. Authentic relationships lift each other up, not tear each other down. Purpose and support go hand in hand, forming a bond that feels almost unbreakable. If someone feels they're losing themselves, bending too much to make things work, it's a sign that authenticity is slipping away. Relationships should enhance who we are, not diminish it. Think about a person who once loved to paint but stops because their partner doesn't see it as valuable. Over time, they may lose touch with their creativity and even their sense of self. A relationship that aligns with God's plan won't strip away individuality. It will make room for it to flourish. Finding authenticity often means reflecting on whether one's values and passions are still present. Sometimes, we get so caught up in trying to make things work that we forget what truly matters. Ask, am I able to pursue what I love? Do I feel like myself around this person? If the answers lean towards compromise and conformity, it's worth reassessing. Authenticity is God's gift, a sign that we're on the right path. Without it, something essential is missing. In the end, a relationship that supports one's purpose and authenticity feels like a blessing, a sanctuary. It's not about two people merging into one, but two individuals growing together, each fulfilling their unique calling. When a relationship brings out the best in both, it feels aligned with divine purpose. And if that sense of authenticity and purpose is missing, perhaps it's a sign to step back and seek the path that truly resonates with God's intentions. Expectations can make or break a relationship, especially when they're unrealistic. Some people go into relationships thinking their partner will fill every gap or heal every hurt, expecting them to be everything they've dreamed of. But no one person can meet all our needs. And it's unfair to place that kind of weight on anyone. Picture someone who expects constant attention and validation. Eventually, this pressure can overwhelm their partner. God didn't design relationships to replace Him. Rather, they're meant to complement our spiritual journey. Setting realistic expectations means understanding that every person comes with their own flaws, just as we do. Expecting perfection is a path to disappointment. Consider a person who's great in many areas but maybe struggles with patience or has a different communication style. Instead of focusing on what's missing, recognize the value in what they do bring. Relationships that last are built on mutual understanding and acceptance, not demands for perfection. God's plan doesn't involve setting impossible standards. One of the most common unrealistic expectations is believing a relationship will fix everything. Maybe someone thinks their loneliness will vanish, or that every insecurity will fade. Yet only God can fill that void completely. Imagine trying to fill a cup with a single drop. It's just not enough. A relationship should add to life, but it shouldn't be expected to complete it. When we understand that, it becomes easier to appreciate what a partner brings without expecting them to solve everything. Healthy relationships are about giving and growing, not constantly taking. If one person expects their partner to sacrifice their dreams or change who they are to fit, it's a sign of unrealistic expectations. True love doesn't ask someone to shrink or abandon their calling. Think of a couple where one has a demanding career. Instead of demanding they change, a supportive partner will encourage their growth. Realistic expectations allow each person to thrive individually and together. A good way to reset expectations is to ask, what do I bring to this relationship? It's not just about what we get, but also what we give. Building a meaningful relationship involves contributing just as much as receiving. By focusing on both partners' roles, it becomes easier to keep expectations grounded. When both people give without expecting perfection, it reflects God's design for balanced relationships, each adding value without overwhelming the other. Realistic expectations bring freedom. They allow both people to be themselves without feeling pressured to constantly meet the other's needs. It's this balance that keeps a relationship healthy and sustainable. When we let go of the notion that one person will fill every role, we open ourselves to a more genuine connection, and in that authenticity, a relationship can grow. Blessed by the understanding that it's okay to not be everything, just enough. Prayer and faith are like the lifeline of any meaningful relationship, especially when seeking clarity. When someone isn't sure if a relationship aligns with God's will, turning to prayer can provide answers that can't be found elsewhere. Imagine taking quiet moments daily, asking God for guidance and genuinely seeking His will above personal desires. Prayer isn't about forcing answers, but about creating a space for divine insight to come through. It's a conversation, a request for wisdom, even when the answers might be hard to hear. Faith plays a unique role here because sometimes what we hear in prayer may not align with what we want. Think of someone praying for a relationship to work, yet the signs keep pointing toward letting go. Faith is trusting that God sees the bigger picture, even when the heart clings tightly. Holding on to faith means accepting that if God's answer is no, there's a purpose behind it. It's about understanding that true guidance isn't always easy, but is always aligned with what's best for us. A helpful practice is praying specifically for clarity. Instead of asking, "Is this person right for me?" Try, "God, if this isn't the right path, show me in a way I can understand." It's amazing how God responds when we're open to His direction. Maybe it's a conversation, a sudden insight, or even a sense of peace that follows a decision. Faith isn't just about asking, it's about trusting the responses even when they're unexpected. Often, God's signs appear subtly, but unmistakably. For those struggling to let go, prayer becomes a way to release attachment. Rather than holding tightly, prayer can transform attachment into surrender, an act of faith that says, "I trust your plan above my own." It's not always easy, but letting go through prayer can bring a peace that's impossible to find otherwise. Picture someone who spends each morning in prayer, allowing God to fill the spaces they once sought to fill in a relationship. This connection with God grows stronger in the waiting. Faith in action means believing that God's timing is perfect. When answers don't come immediately, it's easy to lose patience, but faith reminds us that God's delays are purposeful. Imagine someone praying for clarity in their relationship but waiting weeks or months for an answer. In this waiting, their faith deepens, teaching patience, resilience, and an understanding that God's timing is as important as His answer. Every prayer, even the silent ones, shapes the heart to better align with His will. Ultimately, prayer and faith become anchors, grounding one in God's plan. It's through these practices that one finds strength to either stay or move on, depending on where God leads. By trusting that He holds the blueprint, we allow His guidance to be the compass. And when the heart feels torn, prayer reminds us that we're not walking alone, that God is guiding each step toward a future aligned with His perfect plan. Accepting God's timing can be one of the hardest lessons in life, especially when it comes to relationships. Imagine wanting answers now, longing for clarity, yet hearing only silence. But God's timing is deliberate, purposeful. Every delay holds meaning. It's like waiting for a flower to bloom. Rushing it only prevents it from reaching full beauty. When God doesn't want you to be with someone, He often places pauses and waits along the path, guiding us toward something better. Learning to let go of control and trust in divine timing isn't easy, but it brings a peace that nothing else can. Take someone who's eager to move forward in their relationship, yet obstacles keep arising. Instead of pushing, they could see these delays as signs to pause, to reflect, and perhaps to wait. By surrendering to God's timing, they find clarity and direction. Every relationship that aligns with His timing flows more naturally, without the constant need for force or persuasion. Waiting on God is not passive, it's active faith. It means praying, reflecting, and being open to whatever unfolds. Imagine someone using this time to deepen their faith, to grow individually, and to prepare for what God has in store. This waiting becomes a season of growth rather than stagnation. When one trusts in God's timing, there's no rush, no desperation. Instead, there's a steady confidence that when the time is right, everything will align seamlessly. Sometimes, God's timing is about protection, even if we don't understand it immediately. Think of someone who's held back from a relationship, feeling frustrated by the delay. Yet later, they may see how that timing saved them from heartache or led them to someone who's a better match. When God's timing is accepted, it prevents unnecessary pain and opens doors to relationships that truly fulfill. It's a gentle reminder that He knows what's best, even when we think we do. During these waiting periods, focusing on personal growth is powerful. Rather than fixating on what isn't happening, invest energy in what can be built in the meantime. Pursue passions, develop skills, or strengthen friendships. When the right relationship comes along, this growth becomes the foundation for a healthier connection. God's delays aren't punishments, they're preparation, setting us up for relationships that enhance rather than hinder. In the end, trusting God's timing is about releasing the need to control. It's acknowledging that there's a plan far greater than what we see now. Imagine the relief in knowing that we don't have to rush or force anything, that everything will come in its perfect season. God's timing, when fully embraced, leads to relationships that don't just meet our expectations, but exceed them. And perhaps that's the real gift, a future we couldn't have designed any better ourselves. As we journey through relationships, it becomes clear that God's guidance isn't just about bringing people together, but also about showing when to step away. If you're noticing those subtle signs, the lack of peace, a drift from your purpose, or an unshakable feeling of unease, consider these not as obstacles but as His way of redirecting you. Are you truly listening to these messages? What would it look like to trust God fully, even if it means letting go of something familiar? Imagine the freedom that comes from releasing control, allowing God's plan to shape your path, and knowing that His timing is always perfect. By embracing His guidance, you're setting the stage for relationships that not only bring joy, but also align with your deeper purpose. So, as you reflect on this journey, ask yourself, are you ready to let God lead you toward relationships that nurture your spirit and encourage growth? If this resonated with you and you're eager to continue exploring God's wisdom in relationships, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's keep discovering together, building a life aligned with faith, wisdom, and purpose.